Hey everyone, it's Sandra, and you're listening to the Talk Carby to Me podcast. Go team, go!
So motivational.
Right. Well, hi Anthony. Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast. Welcome to what podcast? The Talk Carby to Me podcast, episode 3.
Episode 3. Exciting times.
Yeah, you should talk like that for the duration of this hour.
I cannot. I will lose my voice. I used to always lose my voice teaching. And that's just from me screaming around, let alone talking in a high pitched voice. So
Screaming. What were you teaching?
I would just like blast the music and I would just teach like, well, it was at Lifetime, right? So I taught like the alpha classes and stuff like that. And then I taught my own spin to all those things. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of screaming that just happened.
That's funny. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had to teach anything where I was like yelling.
Really?
Yeah, I don't talk a lot. Even in like sessions, I don't really talk that much. I like to use like, huh?
I'm a talker as I cut you off.
Yeah. I like to use like really simple cues like up, down, faster. You know what I mean? Like literally, like legit. Like I'll I'll set up an exercise or like so we're squatting, right? I'll explain, hey, here's our squat. Let's just use a goblet squat for an example. You're gonna hold the kettlebell right about chest height, right? Keep it, a little bit off, try to point your elbows up. And then just go. And then up. Control it on the way down, go up. And I just really won't talk, no matter what's going on. If it looks like ass and it's like unsafe, then I'll like intervene and stop them. But for the most part, if we're kind of in the right ballpark of what it should look like, I'll let it keep going. And then I just won't say anything. And then like, hey, how'd that feel? Okay, fix this one thing. All right. And then we'll do it again. And I just won't talk again.
Yeah, no, I talk a lot. I'm like you should have your weight here, like shift your weight this way. Like, I don't know, I'm constantly talking. I'm like cueing, like where you're supposed to be feeling it. Like, make sure you're thinking of this muscle group when you're doing this exercise. I'm constantly talking.
Yeah, what I've noticed, some of my clients that have had ADHD, ADD, stuff like that, they like freak out. They're like, "Why aren't you talking? Like, what's going on? Is something wrong?" Like, and they try to like read my facial expressions, and I'm like, like, just don't worry about it. Just do the thing. Like, go up and down.
Yeah.
And
I
when
was
it's
a client, he was like, do not talk to me during the set, like while I'm doing the reps, which I respect, right? But that was so hard for me. All my other clients loved it, but he was the one person that didn't like it.
yeah, it's funny the way people like to be coached. Yeah, anyone who's ever wanted like a drill sergeant coach, like, oh, just yell at me and like make me do things. Like, it's not really how this works.
Yeah, I'm much more like we will be friends, but at the same time, like we're getting shit done.
Yeah.
That's kind of my coaching persona.
Yeah, I don't like to throw people off too much. All right. So if we're like deadlifting, right, and I got you set up and I'm like, okay, pull the sway out of the bar and just stand up. Good, keep going. And that's about it, as opposed to get your feet down. Right. So you're still keep going, get your feet down, keep your core tight, engage your lats, like grab the bar, squeeze the bar, right? Keep the bar close to you. Like start getting all these cues, and it's like there's like 13 things happening at the same time as like you're pulling this weight, and you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
See, I love all those things because I'm like, oh yeah, I thought about that, right? So I personally love all those cues, but that's why there are 1,000 different trainers and 1,000 different flavors in a candy shop.
Yeah, that's true. So hopefully everyone had a great Halloween. You dressed up, you got some candy. Hopefully that candy's not still in your home, but if it is, we talked about it last time. If it's in your home, it's going to get consumed by someone in that house. So just keep that in mind. Sooner than later, get rid of it. So fun fact, I actually did have a client bring me Reese's peanut butter cups. So shout out to you, client. And if you must know, I was given 4 Reese's peanut butter cups, and I ate them all within 30 seconds. And then we filed that away. We moved on.
Yeah, we almost ran out of candy for trick or treat. So this was my first real trick or treat in a neighborhood where people actually come to your doorbell. Last year we just left a bowl of candy out and we're like, "Bye."
That's that's the way to do it. Like, I,
No, I wanted to be involved this time, and we almost ran out of candy at the end.
yeah, I never wanted to be involved.
Yeah, some kids are greedy, like, they'll, like, go with both hands into the bowl, and I'm like, "No, please, just one." I don't have that much candy.
And it's like, oh, watch your food, watch your candy. I found a Bosu ball in my kid's Snickers bag. It's like, oh boy. Um,
Speaking of Bosu balls, why don't you just start with telling us your exercises or the exercises that you wish would die?
Exercises I wish would die. Anything on a Bosu ball. I don't even understand why Bosu balls exist.
Honestly, I think the only real main purpose a Bosu ball has is either for, like, resting your head on there for whatever reason,
For me,
or doing a push-up off of them
so
to make it harder.
yeah, so like a meeting, right? Like it's a great use for a Bosu ball. Like if you need to
Yeah.
sit down, or if you want to take
Huh?
a nap or something like that, like
Yeah.
great use. Um, yeah,
You
definitely.
know oh,
What?
awkward. We cut each other off. No, go ahead. I'll go after.
Yeah, going through and like swiping on Instagram and just seeing random stuff while I'm killing time between sessions. Like it's a lot of weird stuff people do. I'm like, oh, you're doing bicep curls, but why are you standing on a Bosu ball?
Yeah.
Like, it,
Literally, like, no purpose.
yeah, like let's take something you can't do well and make it harder by
Yeah,
making you stand on something that eliminates all like appropriate feedback from the exercise.
yeah. I mean, I'm all about, like, training balance. I just think that we, like, overuse the Bosu ball for a lot
Hmm.
of it just makes things look cooler, I suppose, but, like, it literally, like, there's if you're gonna squat, like, with a barbell, like, why are you doing it on a Bosu ball? I just don't understand.
Yeah, some wild stuff.
Yeah.
I like. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever used one.
I've only ever used it for push-ups, which that's I mean, there can be a purpose to it. And then I recently saw somebody use it up against a wall and they had their head literally resting on it to do glute bridges with to help prevent their body from sliding when the bar got really heavy when for doing glute bridges. And I'm like, oh, kind of want to try that out. And
Yeah,
that's about
yeah. I think
it.
I was part of a test class one time, and we had to stand on a Bosu ball and do a bicep curl in the left hand and a like high knee with the right leg. That was like doing that. I felt like so out of place. Like I felt like Bambi, like as like a giraffe, like as they're born, and they're just like learning to walk, and it's like what like is this real? Like this. Like this is what's happening right now, and it's like yeah, bicep curl on it, and I'm like, I can't even I can't even stand on this thing. Like
Yeah.
it's a wild, wild invention. Shout out to the insane man that invented Bosu balls.
I mean, I think like if you're doing like Bulgarian split squats, you can maybe have your foot behind you on it. But again, it's like all the things I'm thinking about where I could use it for, they're all like for alternative things, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, I don't have a bench. I can put my foot on the back of a Bosu ball.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So mine is actually like doing dips off a bench or like tricep dips.
Tricep dips off a bench. You're talking about with the arms behind you, right?
Yeah. And like you're like it looks like you're dislocating your shoulder. I mean, there's just the chance of you dislocating your shoulder, like that's just like not the way. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing P90X, I did it for a couple iterations. Shout out to dating myself. Um, yeah, they had a little bit of those in there. I've dabbled a little bit. Can't say I'm crazy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done them before too. It's just like the risk of having like some sort of rotator cuff injury is just so high. And it's
Yeah,
like it's the question is just like why? Like if you can do an exercise safer, then like why do the more dangerous version of it,
that's fair.
right? So anyway, those are mine.
Uh, all right. So we've kind of been talking about a lot, right? So we went into some goal setting stuff, kind of some motivation, discipline as well. I think this episode we're going to be talking a little bit more about like nutrition and things like that. As far as like, what we do, what we like, what we recommend, things of that nature. We'll have some questions that were DM'd to us as well. And actually, we're going to talk about some supplements as well, because I think this is a huge thing that people face with nutrition and things like that, as far as like what supplements should I take? Should I take any supplements at all? And things like that. And let's kind of go through that right now. So obviously, we're both trainers. We're both in the field of nutrition, um, and supplements are going to come up. Personally, I kind of view supplements and nutrition as like your nutrition and your diet plan is the cake, and the supplements are the frosting for the cake, right? So there's very few supplements that are going to be like, oh my God, like this was the difference. Like, I was stuck here in a plateau and I took this one supplement and now here I am, bang, I hit all my goals. That doesn't exist regardless of what the supplement industry is going to tell you. So let's go through like a top five. So, Sandra, what are your top five supplements?
My top 5 supplements are a multivitamin, omega-3 or fish oil, vitamin D, digestive enzymes, and protein powder.
Good old protein powder.
Protein powder.
Did you?
I will have to say, if you don't mind me interjecting, that if you are gonna do supplements, like Anthony said, like I do agree, like again, it's a supplement. Like it doesn't mean like, don't focus on eating healthy just because you're taking a multivitamin, right? But it's basically like we're bringing it's like an insurance policy for your health. That's how I see supplements a lot of the times too. And I think it's super important that we get high quality supplements. Literally, the difference between you maybe having, like, if the supplement's actually helping you versus not doing anything for you at all, is the quality of your supplement. So if you're just like going to CVS and you're getting the cheapest kind, I mean, sometimes it just gives you no benefit, it's just a waste of money. But if you get like a high quality supplement from a company that does their own research and that really cares about the ingredients in their product, it makes such a huge difference. So like shout out to Pure Encapsulation, they are my favorite. Thorn's another great one. I mean, I can go on and on, but Pure Encapsulation by far is my favorite. They will literally like not make a product if they don't like the ingredients that they get.
I like it.
Anyway, what are your top 5?
My top five. My top five is pretty interesting. Like, so mine is creatine, glutamine. It's a multivitamin. When I think of multivitamin, I think of it a multivitamin and a fish oil. I think of it as the same supplement, even though it's not. To be clear, it's not. But um, and
Multivitamin and fish oil.
yeah, pre-workout and electrolytes. Electrolytes are probably that and pre-workout. I mean, those five are the things that I consume most of the time. Um, we'll get more into creatine and stuff like that. I mean, the creatine gets a super bad rap. But if you're someone who has the goal of getting stronger, if you're someone who has the goal of getting bigger, or if you're struggling with energy, and we're talking like in your workouts, struggling with energy, creatine's a great supplement for that. It gets a bad rap for making you bloated. Like I've heard it so many times, like, oh my God, like I'm going to retain water, right? So creatine it draws water into your muscles, which is intracellular, right? Which is not bloating, it's making your muscles bigger. As opposed to when you look at like bloating, typically that's extracellular, and usually it's going to be indicative of another problem. So if you're listening, creatine, super safe. Also, if you eat a lot of red meat, you're already taking creatine anyway. So that is a great supplement to have. Glutamine, I take it not for what you might think, right? So glutamine generally is helpful for recovery, helps with muscle damage and things like that. Uh, but very, very researched, and it actually found to have helped with the lining of your stomach. So someone like me, you can act. So when I say lining of your stomach, you can actually regrow the cells in your lining of your stomach, right? So if you think of how we treat our bodies and what the typical American lifestyle is like, probably over time we're going to get some wear and tear on the lining of that stomach, which is going to lead to things like GERD, IBS, acid reflux, stuff like that. So glutamine can definitely help with your gut health, which is super important, which is why I take it. Um, multivitamin, fish oil. It's kind of like, make sure your check engine lights don't go on, right? So, you check the oil filter in your car, you check the windshield wiper fluid, things like that. Make sure you're topped off and things of that nature. If you look at a diet and where you get all your multivitamins from, it's really hard to get everything in from an edible standpoint. So that's just a good topper to have there. As far as pre-workout, I'm kind of a caffeine whore, to be honest with you. But it's almost like ritualistic for me. Like I have a hard time working out and focusing if like I didn't go through that process of taking pre-workout. Um, so and then going into like electrolytes, right? So I take a lot of electrolytes, obviously, depending on the time of year. I tend to be quite the endurance runner. Makes a huge difference in performance, especially like if you have a workout that's going for a long time and things like that, or you're feeling drained and stuff like that, like throughout the week. As the workload catches up to you, it's a great thing to have to get you recharged.
Totally. I feel like I kind of want to recap a little bit on like why I take certain or like why my top five are my top five, but I would probably talk your ear off for an hour.
It's a lot. I mean, go for it.
So,
You
okay,
could
I'll try to be super, super brief and you can cut
do
me
it like I'm a 5-year-old.
off. Shit. Okay. All right. So multivitamin for the exact same reasons like how Anthony already mentioned. It's just really hard for us to get everything in from our food. Omega 3, just because our omegas are out of balance. So there's multiple different kinds of omegas, and omega 3 we just don't have any more in abundance. So we need more of it to help have anti-inflammatory effects. Also, too, if you struggle with anxiety, depression, any of those things, omega 3 can be really, really helpful with treating some of those things. Um, Vitamin D, same reasons, really important for your mental health. Like our whole system loves vitamin D, and it's super, super important for our mental health, our energy levels. And we all do not spend all day outside anymore. So we all are inside, and we all tend to be basically chronically deficient in vitamin D. Like, very likely, everyone listening to this call is vitamin D deficient, unless you're taking a supplement. Just how it is. And I don't care if you tell me, oh, I go outside all the time, because I can tell you 20 different reasons why you will probably still be vitamin D deficient. Digestive enzyme, just to help us actually pull the nutrients out of our food and better absorb them and digest them. Been a huge game changer for me, my bloating and how I absorb food. And then protein powder, because I tend to sometimes not get enough protein in, especially while I'm pregnant, because I have a little bit of an aversion to it. So it's just been a way for me to get my protein in.
Solid. I like it. Yeah, if you think you get all your vitamin D from the sun, you are fooling yourself. If you got your daily in amount from the sun, you would have skin cancer. So
Yeah.
there's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah. Also, too, like coming. So I just moved here from Florida, from Raleigh. So I moved to Raleigh from Florida. I can't talk anymore. And like it was so common knowledge that we were vitamin D deficient. And then I moved here and I started doing like nutrition consults, and people are like, "Well, it's summer, so I go out a lot." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're not getting enough vitamin D. Like if people in Florida aren't getting enough vitamin D, like you're not getting enough vitamin D. Like that's just how it is."
Yeah,
So
I've actually I think in if you take all the people that I've met in since I've been a trainer, now this could be like your initial gym session, that free session the gym gives you, and things like that, or like everyone that I've ever met that I've talked to about this, I think maybe like less than 2% of people I've ever spoken to have been like, yeah, I take vitamin D.
yeah,
With the exception of the older population where the doctor's like, hey, you need to start taking vitamin D. That's probably the one exception there. But anyone under like 55, I've never met anyone that's like, oh, I take vitamin D all the time.
I love taking my vitamin D, and I noticed such a difference. And if you've ever been told that you're deficient in vitamin D, you likely need your vitamin D, even right now.
All right, quick pause. Everyone go grab some vitamin D.
But I
And
have to say this, okay? Make sure you take your vitamin D with a fat. Oh my God. If you just take it right now on an empty stomach, like you're just gonna pee it out. So please take it with a fat. That's all I gotta say. Okay, we can move on.
all right. So someone actually asked me a few questions. We're not going to get to all of them today, but one thing that came up was metabolism and like how to approach it and like what is it, like what it is, and then like what's it, like how do I approach it, like how do I manage it, how do I mitigate it, right? Obviously metabolism is going to play a role in literally everything. It's the whole kind of core of everyone's fitness and health goals, usually. So let's talk about it, right? So hit me with it.
Okay, so I gotta pull up my Twitter because I actually just did a post on this without even knowing that this question came up. And by the way, we love questions because it really helps us know what you guys want us to talk more about. So basically, like how Anthony mentioned, like metabolism is literally the foundation of it all, right? So I feel like there's so much talk around metabolism, some correct, some mostly not correct, but basically, your metabolism is composed of a few different factors here. And the reason why I stop like that is because there's so much I want to say and I have to make sure I don't go too crazy. So, like, your metabolism is very much influenced by how healthy you currently are, if you currently have any diseases. It's very heavily influenced by your sleep, by your exercise and how often you exercise, supplements that you're taking, medications that you're taking. What am I all missing? Like, are you pregnant currently? Are you not? Right? Like, so your metabolism, it's so changes so much throughout your lifetime and even potentially even throughout your day as well, right? So there's so many factors that go in it. The biggest things that really do affect your metabolism too is your body composition, right? So how much muscle mass do you have? How much body fat mass do you have? A lot of those things affect it. There's different ways to calculate it. So when we talk about metabolism, we sometimes just kind of zone in and focus on your basal metabolic rate. So your basal metabolic rate, not to get too technical here, but we are going to go down this little rabbit hole, is basically if you were to just lay in bed all day and do nothing, that's how many calories you'd be burning in a day. So at this point, you're not even getting up brushing your teeth. Okay. So the majority of your calories that you're burning come from just normal body function, breathing, organ function. Um, yeah. I mean, I can go on, but you kind of get the idea, I think.
Breathing burns calories?
It does. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah. I think the most underrated aspect when you look at metabolism, right, is like, I think it's just your body composition, right? When you look at like how people view it now, and it's like, oh man, back in high school, I can eat like whatever the hell I wanted. And it didn't matter. It didn't stick to me. And now, kind of, it's going to stick with me for a little bit, back on the pounds a little bit. Well, it's like, also look at your lifestyle, right? When you were 18, you weren't sitting in an office for 9 hours a day and then going home, being tired and sitting on the couch watching Netflix and stuff like that. And that's the reality for a lot of people. It's like, it's not so much that like, oh, I suddenly like just don't burn calories anymore. It's like you don't move around as much as you did when you were a child. You probably went to school, right? Every 45 minutes or so, right? In most schools, you got up and you walked to a different part of the school to go to a different class, right? And you did that about 8, 9 times a day. And then after that, I mean, chances are maybe you walked to school if you were in range or stuff like that, or you had to walk to the bus stop. And then you might have had some academic practice after. So like your lifestyle is different. And that's such a huge piece that's missing when people look at like, oh, my metabolism now. It's just that I can't do that now. And it's like, no, you definitely could. If you lived like that now,
Yeah.
you would have a very similar result to kind of what you were used to.
And also, I mean, age does influence it, right? So it's like it is known that your metabolism does slow down with age, but it's not to the extreme as people talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing you look at like as humans, because you brought up body composition and muscle mass, right? So as humans, it's unavoidable. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to lose muscle mass as you get older, as we age. Muscle mass, bone density, right? They're going to go down.
Either gaining or you're losing. You're doing one or the other. You're never just maintaining.
Yeah. So when you look at that, right, that's you're right. That's going to be like your muscles are your force creators in your body in your life, right? So like if you don't have as much muscle working anymore, right, you're not going to burn as much calories, right? It's literally just as simple as that, right? Which is why it's super important when you look at, I want to lose weight, I want to get in shape, I want to make a change and stuff like that, but I don't want to get bulky and stuff like that, and things of that nature. And that whole conversation comes in, and it's like, oh, actually, if you put a little bit of muscle on, that's actually the goal that you want. Um,
Totally. A matter of fact, I think just because you totally brought up like a hot button topic for me when girls are like, "Oh, I don't want to get bulky," and it's like, you know what? Let's try first, and then if you're too bulky, we'll back off. Then, like for a female to get bulky, you know how much effort it takes. And
Not even that. I've never met anyone that accidentally bulked.
yeah,
Like
not naturally.
yeah, like you heard even if you're not, even if you are, taking stuff, right? Like that shit is hard, right? It's probably easy for about, like, if you've never worked out, it's probably easy for about the first 3 months,
Yeah,
right? To just load it on. Technically, that window is really as big as like the first year, but no one's never accidentally putting on like a ton of muscle mass. Like no one's like, oh my god, like I just showed up to the gym a couple times and I fucked around with some resistance bands and I did some Bosu ball stuff and now I got like 20 pounds of muscle on me. Like that's never happened. That's not a thing.
yeah.
So it's like it's like yeah, that's not gonna happen. Like yeah,
The most people that bring up this argument are usually people that don't exercise on a regular basis anyway, so they don't know, they don't understand how slow it actually is to build muscle, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And like my bulk last year was that was like the hardest thing of all time. And I was like trying
Yeah,
and I hit my goal, but Jesus. Yeah. So, public service announcement, you cannot accidentally bulk. You're not going to get blocky out of nowhere. That's not really how it works. Usually it's going to take some proper planning. You're going to need to work at a certain degree of volume, in a certain way, sets, rep scheme, stuff like that, to get to a place where you're like, okay, I am like legitimately adding like a lot of muscle here. It's never going to happen by accident.
yeah.
And if it is, call me, tell me your secrets. Like I'm all for it.
And also too, like if you're getting too bulky, or like let's say in this example of, I guess, unrealistic example of you getting too bulky, you could just stop working out and then there goes your muscle and you're not bulky anymore.
It's a bad idea. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But I have literally told people that. I'm like, well, then just stop working out if you're starting to get too bulky. And literally, no one ever had to take me up on that advice
Yeah.
because you just don't need it.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. Um, and also, I wonder where that comes from. Like who started that?
Oh, I can tell you exactly how that starts. So it's people that started looking at other women that are like for instance, like bodybuilders that do take help to look very bulky, that go on stage then, right? And so they see these like women that look like men and they're like, I want to work out, but I just don't want to look like a man. And in order for a female to look like a man like that, like I mean, it's going to take you years. If you're new to working out, it's going to take you years and assistance from supplements and other non-supplements to look like that. And like I get, and then on top of it, you have like those women who are super, super beast mode, right? Like they're like beast, and then they have body fat on top of that. And now they do look a little like bigger, you know what I mean? I get that too. But again, like that is years. Like when I say years, I'm talking like 3 years plus a decade, 2 decades. Like that's how long it's gonna take you if you're doing it completely naturally and if you're maybe all dialed in.
It's a, it's a long time.
Yeah. And when I say 3 years, like, if you can do that in 3 years, like, you're working out 5, 6 days a week consistently for 3 years.
Yeah. And like I think in today's world, like it's attractive to be lifting heavy as a girl. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like, and it's not some not. And when I say attractive, it's not so much like the physical aspect of it, right? It's like, oh wow, your body looks great. Like, it's like, yeah, she's getting after it. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing, at least to me anyway. There's nothing really attractive being frail, to be honest with you.
yeah. That has definitely changed a lot in the industry that, like, now more females are coming forwards or more females are lifting heavy and they have, like, these really amazing bodies, and so now it's kinda changing things a little bit, which is super exciting, but people need guidance. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
exciting.
So when I was training in a commercial gym, my favorite thing to do, and I have a lot of women clients, and some of them are fairly strong. I used to love setting up for deadlifts, or squats next to a guy, and uh, just literally just like watch her outwork him.
Yeah,
Um, and that would be like my favorite. That was like one of the things, one of the small guilty pleasures in personal training in a commercial gym was those things there. And you see them all the time. You get the guys with the huge upper bodies and the chicken legs, and then they're going in half squatting, and it's like, all right, Chica, show them how it's done.
yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that's one of my favorite things about lifting heavy is sometimes observing the other men around you and being like, "Is that really for her?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yucky.
yeah. I've definitely bicep curled a couple guys squats, and I'm like, come on, man, you got to give me more than that. You were a grown man.
Yeah, I look at
Um,
sometimes girls when they're working out and I see their little lightweights and I just wanna help them so badly, but I don't wanna be that person because I hated when people walked up to me when I was new to the gym, so I don't wanna be that person, but I'm really nice if I do approach you. Comes from a good place.
Yeah, I think the differences between the male and female approach to the gym is so funny to see, right? So like if you have a male client, you're probably going to be spending, at least for me, in my experience anyway, you're going to be spending a lot more time on the lower body stuff than you are the upper body. Because that's going to just going to come, you know, naturally to men. When you have a female, if you switch it, now again, this is assuming everything is moving correctly and you don't have to fix any of the major patterns or anything like that. But and you just flip it, right? And you have them do a little bit more upper body, they're going to get to their results so faster because there's so much more to be gained from that opposite side of the body where that where they don't usually that's not usually typically the focus. Um, so I think it's
Yeah,
funny to see like those differences in the approach and stuff like that.
for sure.
In like the general population of gym goers.
Yeah. So we're saying all of that to tell you that the more muscle mass you have, the faster your metabolism is gonna run.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely got sidetracked there. So here's how I
I'm just bringing it back.
yeah,
Let's bring it
here's how I like to think about metabolism, right? Think of metabolism, and again, by now, if you've interacted with me, you probably have an understanding that I oversimplify everything, just so it's a little bit easier to understand. Um, I think of it like a campfire, right? The campfire, it's just like think of it like a campfire you're just given, right? Now, how do you affect the campfire? I want my fire to burn hotter. The hotter my fire burns, the more calories I'm going to burn. So we're going to have to get some more logs. Log one, right, is your diet, right? And how it's constructed, right? Are you getting enough protein, right? You have to expend energy to eat protein, eat and digest protein, right? So that's going to add a little bit more there, right? Your activity level. Now, when you say activity level, what I mean is how often do you walk around? Not counting exercise, just how active are you, right? So obviously, if you have an office job and something like that, right? You're gonna go and you're gonna be sitting down a lot. Like, what's that like? Like, are you walking to work? Do you ride a bike to work, or are you driving? You know, how much time do you spend just not moving? Um, right. So you can obviously influence that pretty easy. Just go for a walk. Like you see it, I see it all over social media now. Oh, hot girl walk and go and hit the trail and stuff like that, right? Like, yeah, stuff like that, right? Activity, right? Don't even think of it as exercise. It's easy work. Then you have your exercise, right? That's going to be another log that's going to be on there, right? So I went to the gym and I trained XYZ, right? And then you have how much muscle you have. And that's why it's important where it's like, okay, we want to add a little bit more muscle to your body. So it's easier to burn calories, right? So you don't have to starve yourself to lose weight and stuff like that. So once you have all those logs, right, you can take your baseline metabolism and now it's a little different and stuff like that. So that's kind of my view on it, metabolism, like how it all kind of plays together. It's not as easy as like, oh, like this is just my metabolic rate, and that is it is what it is. You can influence that various ways.
Yeah, totally. I mean, also too, I think where a lot of people go wrong around metabolism is that they just look at like these 1,200 and 1,500 calorie plans and like they think like that's how many calories they have to be eating to, I don't know, achieve their goals and all of that. And a lot of times, like people that are bigger, that have a lot of like body fat on them, their metabolism is really high. Like, well, I should say really high. They have a higher metabolism than someone who is leaner and going on and then trying to make changes to their body and like losing body fat, right? So they have to go in two different plans a little bit. So I say all that by saying like your metabolism and the way we figure it out, it has a lot to do with how much you weigh. And even though what your weight's composed of is super important as well as we get into the details of things, but your weight overall is a factor. So for instance, if like Anthony was like 400 pounds, his metabolic He's not, by the way.
400 pounds of solid muscle.
Let's just say it wasn't solid muscle. Let's just say it was just whatever. He's just a little bigger. His metabolism will be way higher than what he is currently at now, right? So I'm just saying that out there because a lot of people don't know that part.
Think of it this way. Here's kind of like how I like to frame it up, because when you see, especially when you have a client come to you and they're very obese, I know off the bat that we got some muscle going there, right? That shit is not easy to carry around, right? So
Well, yeah, they
I'm
have like built-in weights. That's what I say.
eg- it's a perfect perspective for it, right?
Yeah.
And I think once you can show that, it's like, dude, like you've got some muscle. We just need to get it working, right? And we need you to put it to good use, right? So think about it, right? So I'm 100 and what am I? 192 pounds. Um, Imagine if I was 400 pounds, I would I would have so much more muscle because I have to carry around an extra 200 pounds. That's like a whole another person, right? So you're gonna have a lot of muscle under there. So it's not one of those things where it's like, hey, like I have literally no muscle. I'm a skeleton with fat on it. Like, no, you've got an engine. We just need to get the engine. You just need to get the car out of the garage, take the tarp off, dust it off, right? Get it running again, right? Give it an oil change, right? Top it off on fluid and stuff like that. And like, yeah, so like their metabolisms are crazy. It's just the one of the things there is like, how do you manage, the calories in versus calories out? And again, obviously your lifestyle is going to, play a role in that. So,
Let's actually, if you want to, okay. So I would love to like just figure out what your basal metabolic rate is right now, and then I want to see what it is if you're 400 pounds, just for fun.
all right, let's do it.
Okay, so you're 192. How tall are you?
I am 6 feet tall.
Okay, and then you're I think you're 34, right? I can totally give your age away right now.
I am 34.
Okay, so your basal metabolic rate's 1,851.
Oof.
Yeah. So that's like again, like if Anthony were just to lay in bed all day and do nothing, 1,851. Now, if he's sedentary, little fun fact, okay? So he has an office job, he does not exercise. He just wakes up, brushes his teeth, goes to work, sit all day, okay? 2,221. So it's really only 400-ish tops extra calories that he's burning in a day from a sedentary lifestyle. Predicted, okay? Predicted. So let's pretend you're 400. So if you were 400 pounds, Anthony, your basal metabolic rate would be 2,796 calories.
Ooh, that's a
Yeah,
lot. There's a lot of room for Reese's Pieces in that.
there is. And then your sedentary burn, just for fun, is 3,355 calories,
It's not bad.
right? So that's why, like, okay, so let's say if you are obese and you're 400 pounds, if you just find a way to shave off like 300 calories, 500 calories from your diet, you'll probably lose weight.
Fun fact, 1 pound is 3,500 calories. Divide that by seven, it's 300. If you just omit 300 calories a day or create a deficit, right? Whether that be you exercise or you don't eat, if it's 300 calories, you will lose a pound a week, which is
It's
about,
500.
can I not math? Did I just fuck up math?
Yeah, it's okay. I just thought I have to correct it since we're on a
You're
podcast.
right. You're correct.
It's 500.
Um,
I
oh,
think
I know.
it's
I know.
confused.
Yeah, I usually think of it as 300 from food, 200 from exercise. Okay.
Yeah.
There it is. Um, Shout out to the teachers back, going up in high school. They're like, you're never going to have a calculator everywhere you go. Um, I happen to not have my phone in reach. So thank you for the correction on that. But yeah, just find a way to create that, right? It doesn't have to be significant. You shouldn't be hungry. You shouldn't be starving.
Yeah.
So so when we talk about like the different dieting strategies, I think one of the ones that is out there and is pushed a lot is like macros based dieting. So now that we know my BMR, right, we can kind of have this segue into kind of macros, what they are, what the formula is, how do you kind of like figure that out for yourself. And we can even use my same metrics too. So would you like to talk on macros, how you get them, how you find out what your macros are, and what people are talking about when they're there?
Yes. So I'd like to kind of kick this conversation off by kind of hitting on a hot button topic real quick, and then I'm going to dive more into it. So I think a lot of times when we start talking about macros, it comes kind of from like a bodybuilding world. And I would like to make a I would like to distinguish different populations here because it's super and super important that we look into your lifestyle, and this is kind of where your body composition comes into play. So if you're someone that has a lot of muscle on yourself and you work out like very hard 5 6 days a week, you need a different set of macros than someone who's sedentary and goes to an office all day, okay, and does not exercise. I think that's super important for us to just bring up because I have worked with a lot of trainers in the past, really, really great trainers, but they start giving them the same advice that they take themselves, or they start giving their clients nutrition advice based upon them having a lot of muscle mass. And then people are like, well, I'm eating all of this. They're like, well, how my like trainer told me, but I'm not losing the weight. And it's because that information just wasn't appropriate for you. So I just had to say that. And
Yeah.
now into detail.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think we'll use macros for me as an example with my lifestyle, and that'll kind of paint that picture as far as eating and kind of if you were to break your diet down that way, why it's going to go. So, macros basically is the amount of carbs that you're going to eat in grams, the amount of grams of protein you're going to eat, the amount of fat that you're going to eat in grams. Um, it works as long as you track to like 99% accuracy. And that's kind of what the hiccup is there. So like when I have a nutrition client, unless you are like a personal trainer and you're going on stage and it's like I need to cut 10 pounds in the next 8 weeks, we're not talking macros ever. Right. We're talking portion sizes, portion guidelines, eat this, not that, right? Here's some better choices for you and stuff like that. It is so difficult to stick to it, right? So if you already can't make good food choices, right? If you already struggle with meal frequency, if you already struggle with meal planning, if you don't like eating the same thing every day, if you don't like meal prepping, you don't have time to meal prep. Um, Side note, probably one of the number one excuses that you'll find. You're probably macro dieting is probably not going to work out well for you. It it might be nice to get an idea of what does 50 grams of protein look like on a plate, right? If you want to experiment and stuff like that. But as far as like a lifestyle of eating that way, right? Most people, it's not going to be for most people.
Yeah. And I think also too, it just also depends like where like what kind of diet you're starting from. So Anthony and I also like on top of everything else, we have a little bit different coaching styles when it comes to food and all of that. I very much always end up working with people who have a very like what sounds what looks and seems like a very great diet and they're stuck. Right. So like if you were like I usually work a lot with the people, they're like, I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. And on paper, everything looks perfect. And I need to find that needle in the haystack and see like why you're not reaching your goals. And that's a little bit where then the macro part comes in for me, where I'm a lot more macro based coaching. And that's just the beauty of working with different coaches and with different kinds of styles and different kinds of calibers as well, is that we all have a little bit different approaches to get you there. So I also come from a background of working with clients that sometimes had way better diets than me, and I had to figure out like why they're not losing weight. And that's
Yeah.
where a lot of where like the details come into play. But if you are someone who you already know you have to make lifestyle changes to your diet, you don't need to do all this counting stuff yet. You can just start like switching out food groups and all of that. And then you can start bringing in like calorie counting and all of that as a tool once you start plateauing on that. Continue. Or say you say what you want
What?
to say.
No, no, I was just nodding. We can see each other on camera, by the way. That's what you just
Yes.
heard there. Yeah. So macro. I mean, I've done it before. I'm not crazy about it, but again, I'm not like a competitive bodybuilder. I'm probably never going to be. It's just not something that I have a desire to do. So, shout out to anyone in that industry, right? Props, hats off to you, right? That stuff is hard. Anyone who's ever competed, right? That's a tough gig. I am not about that life, not at all, right? I like snacks, to be honest with you, um, in moderation.
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I love how you always like admire our bodybuilding world.
yeah, like that shit is hard.
It really is.
Yeah, it's hard. I have no interest in it whatsoever. Like, um, you know what I mean? But like, I can respect like the discipline and like the lock in on that and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just not for me.
Well, to kind of give you a little bit of idea of like what I would do with Anthony, right, in his macros and all of that. I first want to, I would start off with like what are his goals, right? So depending on his goal, things would shift a lot in terms of his macros too. But also I know how Anthony trains. I know how he works out. I know how often he works out. He works out very, very hard, and he works out multiple days per week for sure, 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 even, and sometimes twice a day. So he also has a very active job. So from a caloric standpoint, like he has a way bigger caloric intake that he can work with, versus if he just had an office job starting out there.
Yeah, we can go into kind of like the particulars and stuff like that, like what like my typical training regimen is like. I always end up working out 7 days a week. I tried to get a rest day, mostly because contrary to what I think, I'm not indestructible. But typically, right, I'll have what it normally looks like, just so you guys can have an idea as she's going through this, right? So Sunday is usually going to be somewhere between a 12 and 15-mile run. Monday is going to be an upper body day. And we're probably going to have somewhere around 50 to 60 working sets, right? So that's not counting warm up sets. That's just like hard sets, right? And then we're going to go on a little 5-mile run. Tuesday, we're going to do legs. Legs is going to be closer to a 40 to 60 set working set day. And we're going to go on a little 5-mile run again. Wednesday, I'm not going to be lifting on Wednesdays typically, but I will go on usually a speed run. So what I mean by that, I might do a fartlek run. I might be looking for at a time trial. I might go through and say, hey, let's see how fast we can run a 10K, stuff like that. Or I might just work on some intervals and stuff like that, right? So that's usually Wednesday. Thursday, we're right back to upper body with no run. Friday usually is going to be another speed run and a lower body day. Saturday is going to be usually some light stretching. So if I do have a rest day, it's usually going to be Saturday. A lot of that depends on what I have going on, right? But because I run often and frequently, that's going to change the variables a little bit with like how I need to eat and what my day of eating actually looks like. Because if you look at the time of year it is, right, I'm going to be bulking a little bit. I'm probably going to try to add about 8 pounds of muscle as I did last year. And I'm not going to change my run volume. So food is going to be my best friend.
For sure. And so for someone like him who's like trying to gain weight, right, we have to increase the calories that he's burning. So in his case, like he's probably burning with all his working out between 3,500 to 3,800, 3,900 calories a day. Guessing.
It's about right. Yeah. If you look at any of my trackers, it's always somewhere between 3,500, 4,500, depending on what I've done that day. Typically, I also get like 17,000 steps. Right. So
Yeah,
and that's just like an everyday thing. So when you look at like how active you're being and stuff like that. Now, part of that, granted, is I work in a gym, right? I got to walk around a lot. Also, that's a little influenced by I went for a run and things of that nature. But although all those different variables add up to kind of like to get you when you look at like metabolism per se.
yeah. So basically, so I would start off with like where are your calories at, right? So somewhere in between that swing, and I'd make sure that we're always either hitting your upper end of your calories. So if your swing is like 1,000, like from 3,500 to 4,500, like that's a big swing in there. Like, and he's trying to bulk, like he definitely wants to hit closer to 4,500, if not more than that, on the days that he is having more intense workouts. Definitely more than that to help with his bulking. And half those calories should come from carbs because that's how much muscle mass he has. Because the more muscle you have, the more sugar you can store in that muscle. So your carbohydrates become even more important for that. And then because he's trying to bulk, which means he's also trying to gain some muscle mass along the way in that, I would then make sure he's having at least 2 grams of protein per kilogram of his body weight. And then we fill in the rest with fat. And that's
Yeah.
typically how I would do something like that for him. Now, just to kind of give you a counter example, let's say he's trying to lose weight now and he stays this active, right? So in that case, we just need to bring in a caloric deficit in there. And so that case, right? So maybe for him between 3,000 and 3,500 calories, really depends on his activity level, and we'd work a lot closer together at that standpoint to see, how much is he exercising and all of that. I would be very much involved in all of that. And maybe some days he'll have more calories, some days he'll have a little bit less. And then we'll still preserve the same amount of grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, excuse me. Choking on my own self. And we would screw around with the carbs and fats a little bit. Ideally trying to preserve as much carbohydrate as possible and messing around with the fats, but making sure the fats don't go too low so he doesn't have hormonal issues.
Yeah. That's pretty close to what I was doing before. And I think one thing to note, right? So obviously, if you look at why I work out, right, and stuff like that, obviously we talked about, hey, like, you know, I like to be healthy, I like to extend life, but I'm also the reason I train the way that I do, I like running Spartan races. And it's been a goal of mine, right, to perform well in those, right? So there's certain levels of training that you have to go to, right, when you get into some kind of aspects of competition. Right now, that could be if you're going for a powerlifting meet, a bodybuilding show, obstacle course racing, stuff like that. Even if you're an athlete or anything like that. So one thing that I actually never go into a caloric deficit. If I do, it's by accident. Mostly because I feel like death. I'll like so if on Monday like I don't eat enough and then I work out, do my thing on Tuesday, right? I'm gonna feel a little off. Come Wednesday, like I'm shot, right? I can feel the difference in my body. And when you go into a lot of like, hey, like how do I make sure that I can do all this work and not be tired and stuff like that? A lot of the variables go in, like how much are you sleeping? But a big one is food. You can't expect to perform well if you're not eating and stuff like that. So a lot of times when I want to lose weight, I'll just bring it down to maintenance based on the fact that me personally, my lifestyle is going to dictate that. Chances are I'm probably going to accidentally, add a few burn calories in there, just the way that I go about my day and stuff like that. So sometimes you don't have to go into a deficit, right? If you're very, very, very active. Now, if you're not very active, then yeah, definitely got to go in a deficit. But I know that more often than not, I'm going to create one if by accident. So
Yeah, and again, that like plays a lot into like what are you trying to accomplish, right? Like Anthony's goals like are not what your general population is going to be going through, but it's still important to note because sometimes I feel like people coach towards like someone like Anthony, and he is a completely different caliber of an individual. So like if Anthony was like a more general population, more sedentary lifestyle, stuff like that, his macro breakdown, and we can just like quickly talk about it. I will and this is again where working with someone is super important and not just taking general information is critical because everyone's diet and lifestyle is so different. But most of the times people that are more general population, more sedentary, more just like they're not like looking to go out and perform well because it's performance nutrition is different to physique nutrition to general population nutrition. I would very much work on reducing his starchy carbohydrate intake. And all that has to do is that starchy carbohydrates really help fuel with energy. And if you're not expending as much energy as an individual like Anthony, you just need less. So most people who are general population, they overeat on starchy carbohydrates, and the importance of them has been overstressed. Because again, I screw those up as you are more active, and I screw those down as you are less active.
yeah, for sure. What's your typical day eating like? So obviously me and you differ but based on what we do. Like what's yours like?
Yeah. Well, so I will lead into this conversation by, in case you forgot, I'm pregnant. Super important here to note. I'm
We
eight
got
months
a
pregnant.
we got a baby on the way.
We do. So I'm 8 months pregnant. And by the way, Anthony's not the father, just in case. We should probably note that.
You just had you had to go. The funny thing is, I was talking to someone about this. When your baby's born, right? It's gonna have my features because me and G have the same features. We're both tall, dark haired.
Yeah. So basically, you should know I'm 8 months pregnant. I also do work out, right, on top of all of that. And I do lift heavier than most people do, even though I'm pregnant. Even
Yeah,
though
you hit a that 205 deadlift last week. I saw it.
Yeah, and I have to go lighter. I have we started contraction, so we have to go a little lighter. So maybe we don't want to do flavor this early. So basically I start off my morning with a yogurt and like a muesli, which I don't know how to say in more English version, but it's like that cereal, like that oatmeal cereal with the raisins in there, like the muesli. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Okay. So I eat that in the morning. I will admit that I do have deli meat. I know I'm a dietitian and I know I should know otherwise, but I'm not concerned about food poisoning in my deli meat. So I sometimes have deli meat and toast in the morning too, because I just love that. And then I'll have a soup or a salad a lot of times for lunch. And with that, I have some sort of starchy carbohydrate. So if it's like rice or bread or something like that, one of the using one of those two things. And since I work from home now a lot, I can just make it myself, which is really cool. Then for dinner, I usually have again some sort of grain and vegetable and protein kind of a thing. Throughout the day, I've been snacking a lot on like nuts and fruit. And then for like dessert, I usually have some fruit again. And that's kind of like my day.
nice.
What's your day looking like?
Oh, my day. My day is a lot more boring than that. So a typical day of eating for me, I'll wake up, I'll have a banana and a protein shake. Then I will go. Next meal is usually gonna be about 6 eggs scrambled. I don't do any of the egg white stuff. I'm taking the whole egg. I'll throw in like about a handful of mushrooms, a couple fists of spinach in there. Scramble that up. I'll have it with a bagel and peanut butter. Next meal, keep it super, super simple. If you heard me talk nutrition before, I don't use a lot of ingredients, right? So at the beginning of the week, I make a bunch of turkey burgers, I'll make a bunch of meatballs, right? And then I will have about a cup to 2 cups of rice with meatballs and spinach, or a cup to 2 cups of rice with 2 turkey burger patties and spinach. Then when we look at dinner, it might be so I have that lunch meal twice, by the way, the meatballs and the turkey burgers twice. So that's meal 4 and 5, or excuse me, 3 and 4. And then I'll have dinner. Dinner is probably going to be something like another 2 cups of rice, a couple chicken breasts, and usually it's going to be broccoli, zucchini, something like that. A big bowl for me because I'm a big bowl guy has been uh, 2 cups of rice, some chicken, some broccoli, and hit it with a little bit of teriyaki sauce. It tastes pretty good. It's also very simple, right? So every meal that I just gave you that I eat on a regular basis is about 3 to 4 ingredients, right? So you keep it super simple and just make it taste the way that you like things to taste. You're generally going to be in pretty good shape. And then when I go for my runs, I take a about 3 to 400 calorie solution with me. I drink that and then I go for a run. So it's not a shake; it's basically like water and carbs. And I'll go through that. Now, obviously, that'll change a little bit. I don't really snack ever, right? But I might, depending what's around, I might have a cookie in there somewhere. Shout out to cookies. But yeah, that's about my day for most of them.
Mm, yeah, sounds pretty solid. Yours is much more simple. I like that my food a little bit more complex. I just like how everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Right.
that's I think my big pet peeve with nutrition is when people try to make meals like full legit meals. Like, hey, like, oh, would you have? I had this extravagant meal, but I need to find a healthy way to make it. And it's like, what? Like, just pick some simple stuff that you can eat and eat pretty regularly, and you'll be okay. Like, you don't need to be trying to make like a healthy version of lasagna. Like, why on earth would you do that? Just eat the lasagna. Right. Same thing. We talked about this before with like cauliflower. Like all those fancy meals, don't get cute, right? Or if you're gonna get cute at dinner, right? And have the rest of your day be pretty simple, pretty locked in, pretty easy to manage, right? It's really easy to look at a plate and say, okay, that piece of chicken's about the size of my hand. Looks like my hand was the ladle, right, for my carb portion, right? I see some fats, I see some greens on here. It's very simple, right? So you get an idea. It's really hard if that's all like mixed together and like there's different layers to it. And now you have like 35 different ingredients because chances are you're accidentally going to be adding a lot of calories, right? So one of my favorite things to eat for dinner is chicken Alfredo. I just make it without the Alfredo sauce, and I do everything else the same. And I'll throw a little oil in there, maybe a little butter and stuff like that. But you take out the big calorie portion. It's actually not bad. Now, obviously, if you have not the greatest diet, you're probably not going to like that initially. But as you clean up your diet, your palate will begin to appreciate more of a whole food taste to it. And right? That's a good substitution that I found that works for me.
Totally. I think also too, like there's just like different tools in the toolbox, right? So I think like, if you are that person that does need more of those meals too, like there is a place for you in the world as well. But I do think your life gets so much simpler and your life just gets easier and it all becomes less complicated the simpler you make your meals. And then as you learn more about nutrition, as you learn more about how food interacts and calories and all of that, and as you just become more educated on it, you can start messing around with more complex things as you learn how to utilize it. Um, and so let's say you are that person, like you need your lasagna every single night. Maybe at that point in time, that is something to talk about where you say, hey, like, how can we substitute out your lasagna for something that will still make you happy, where you don't feel deprived, but you still kind of get that same feeling. And then maybe once a week, you have like a full on lasagna. Right. So it's just kind of like find that balance that works for you, depending on your goals again. Right. Everything's
Yeah.
goal dependent and activity driven.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's also dependent on like what you like to eat, right? So like if you don't like broccoli, I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of broccoli in your meals, right? If you don't like red meat, I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of red meat in your diet. If you don't like seafood, right? Same thing, right? So, if you come across a diet or something like that, and it's like, hey, like calls for salmon tonight, don't force yourself to eat something you don't like, right? So, when you go about planning, right, and you go through meal prepping, right, find something you like that you can eat a lot of, right? So, um, I also never really have people meal prep the whole week, right? What I have them do is I have them cook in bulk, right? So just take your protein, whatever it's going to be, whether it's going to be chicken, whether it's going to be turkey burgers. That's just for me. It's usually chicken, turkey burgers, or meatballs. Right. My meatballs aren't fancy. It's literally just ground beef rolled up and slow cooked. I don't put too much in them. Um, right. Just make a ton of that. Right now, I could use those meatballs for spaghetti. Right. I could use them right? In some variation of an Italian dish, right? I can just eat 3 meatballs, or I can eat them I usually do with meatballs over rice with some spinach and stuff like that, right? So, but have make things that are like super flexible, right? So if you had a good example, if you make a ton of ground beef and season it with taco seasoning, one night it could be tacos, one night it could be a taco bowl, another night it could be a burrito, another night it could be a wrap, something like that. Or you could just eat taco meat, with some rice and stuff like that, right? So make things that are like super flexible, right? Same thing with chicken. One of my favorite things to do, throw a few pounds of chicken in a crock pot, let it heat up, and just shred it. And now you've got shredded chicken. You can use that in like 50 different meals if you wanted to, right? In any combination that you want. So it can be a sandwich one day, it could be a salad, it can be a bowl. You know what I mean? It can be anything like that, really. So that would be kind of like my best advice, right? When you're looking at meal prep and how to set up the day and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think this is like cool, like where you and I can have these kind of conversations because you and I are so different in that regard. Cause I definitely like utilize that strategy a lot too, where like I just like made like a bunch of different kinds of meats, even like season them. Like sometimes I'll do like 5 chicken breasts, right? And then I'll season each of them a little bit differently and just to kind of give myself more diversity. And then just make like 5 different meals out of it then too. But I've definitely been in a place where like, especially like when I was bodybuilding more, but even after that too, um, I am one of those people, like, I love calculating my calories. I love figuring out my food on my Fitness Pal, and I love food diversity. So for me, like, I need to be so dialed in with my nutrition that I can have that diversity and still hit my goals. So I love like weighing out my food then into my little containers and know that my meals, they're all like, have a certain amount of grams of protein in there and stuff like that. I'm obviously not doing that right now, given like I'm pregnant. I'm kind of like taking a break from all of that. But like when I get back to that world of I want to get back to my old body, like all those things are coming back. And those are tools that work really great for me. That I just have like, my 5 little lunches set up and they all are between 400 and 500 calories. I don't know, 30 grams of protein, let it be, and a certain amount of carbs and fat. And that's just how I love to roll. And then I know how much I can have for dinner. And I just kind of do my math backwards for the day.
Yeah,
Does that
yeah,
make
for sure.
sense? Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I keep mine simple because I don't like to think about it. If I had to cook every single meal and I didn't meal prep, like I actually, with my schedule, most days, with the exception of a few, I could cook, right? For every single one. Like I would lose my mind. Like I would lose the amount of dishes and stuff like that. Like I don't want to think about that. Like I might cook. The only thing that really differs ever is dinner. Um, Sometimes it's what I've been eating like 100 times throughout the week. Or sometimes I get a little creative. It depends what's going on, but like I just do not want to think about it. It's one less thing I have to think about. So I keep mine super simple, right? So like right now, I have probably like 3 pounds of meatballs in my fridge. I've got a ton of shrimp that's already been cooked in my fridge, and I got some chicken tenderloins that's already there. And I also have a huge pot of rice that I cooked yesterday that's just sitting there, right? So I can put those together in any kind of combination. I will usually I always cook like vegetables fresh,
Right.
but for the most part, I really don't have to think too much. It's like, oh, that's a protein, I'll eat that, and that's a carb, I'll eat that, right? Like I've disassociated from like I'm eating a meal, unless I go out to eat. But um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
totally. Yeah, that's just like how everyone's different, right? Like
yeah, and
my fluff on my food.
yeah, yeah. I've seen some of your meals, and I'm like, okay, you must like them. I don't understand.
I do love cooking, like, I do love grocery shopping, I love cooking, I love finding, like, new recipes to try out, like, that is definitely, like, a love of mine, and so, because I know it's a love of mine, I've also gained quite a bit of weight from being in this love of mine. So,
Mm,
I have learned to control it, and I control it a lot through logging and food and all of that, so that's why I had to use that little hack.
yeah, that happens though. It's a fun thing to be a good cook. Shout out to anyone who loves being a good cook. Like I can cook my ass off. I just don't want to do it. I'm just not like I'm not about that life.
Like,
Um,
when I started watching, like, MasterChef and all that, or any of, like, those cooking shows, like, I am pumped. Like, we are making some meals.
I get a little fired up too. Like sometimes, like I'll be sitting there and like I want to get involved.
Yeah.
Um, but like in that capacity, like where like there's probably a crew that cleans up the kitchen. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to do it at home,
Mm,
right? Unless I'm entertaining or unless I'm making dinner for someone, or anything like that. Like if it's just me eating, we're keeping it super simple. Um, oh but yeah, the chopped all those cooking shows, like I'll get fired up like easy. Like I'm just ready
yeah.
to go.
I will say, though, like, there's a difference between cooking for 2 versus cooking for 1. Like, when my husband's traveling, my meals look way different. I'm more like, "Oh, yeah, I got some leftover here, leftover there, throw it all into a salad, but I'm done."
Yeah. And sometimes that's how it works, right? I think when you look at your meal plan and your meal prep and stuff like that, putting your diet together, right? A little piece of advice here. If you're cooking for one person, right? Just cook like you're cooking for two for dinner. Take your leftovers and eat that for lunch tomorrow, right? So if your
So
priorities are relatively in line, right, you're going to have a meal there. That way you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about takeout food. You don't have to worry about where you're going to eat tomorrow for lunch. You've already got that going. If you're cooking for, say you got a little family going on, you got 2 to 3 people, just cook like you're cooking for 5 to 6. It'll save you. It sounds like, oh my God, that's a lot of food. It's going to save you money anyway, because you more often than not, lunch is the meal that we're going to, get some takeout or something for. It'll save you time. It'll save you money in the long run. Especially if you're not meal prepping, that's a good way to kind of hack that, right? So you go through, and I can't believe I just said hack, but you go through and when you actually do cook, just cook more,
yeah.
right? And eat half now, half later, right? And follow your portion guidelines. And it's a really easy way to kind of almost like a micro version of meal prepping. So not meal prepping for the week, but you're meal prepping for the next day.
And guess what? This is like my favorite thing I once discovered. And I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? So let's say you made an abundant amount of food and you're getting tired of eating it over and over again, and it's still within a healthy window. Freeze it. Make a meal, freeze it. And then you got a frozen meal ready to go. That's way better than whatever other frozen meal you would have bought at the store.
You've clearly never put in pizza rolls in an air fryer. True story. I did it one day just because I literally like putting pizza rolls in a pan and putting it in the oven was just not, it was not going to happen. I put them in the air fryer. I might have done something there. So if you're out there, try it. You're not going to be mad about it.
I don't remember the last time I had pizza rolls, I will tell you.
It's probably the last time you lived.
Probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, my hack is really good though, okay? So if you like, let's say you meal prepped a bunch of food for the week, or you made like a bunch of meals and you're like, oh my God, if I have to eat this meal one more time, I swear to God, then just freeze it and it will come in handy one day. I promise you.
Love it.
Yeah. And that, so basically, I'll say best take home advice right now for anyone listening is, as you can see, like Anthony and I, like our taste buds and the way we like to eat is different, right? So we wouldn't probably thrive on the same nutrition program for, let's say, for weight loss goals, performance goals, whatever, right? So we'd probably need a little bit different plans. And that's why I think it's important to like not beat yourself up if whatever plan you did decide to follow and you failed on it. There's a reason why you failed on that program, and kind of like look into like what didn't work on that program for you and align yourself with someone or a program that does go more with your lifestyle. So food is so personal and it's so different with every single, with every person. It's different with every person. It's different with every lifestyle as well. So kind of keep that in mind. That I hear a lot of times people feel like they're failures because they failed a certain program, and that's not the case. It's just that program wasn't for you. So
Yeah, super true. Like we talked about before, every diet works. You just got to find the one that works for you.
exactly. Yeah. I think next week we should probably talk a little bit more about specific macros and like what that
Yeah.
all is, given how much we've talked today.
Yeah.
We'll have to go more into detail around that and give you guys a better idea.
Yeah. We'll definitely get more granular as we go. But yeah, so talking about like today, again, obviously the Bosu ball, right, needs to die. Supplements, supplements, right? We gave our top fives. And then we talked a little bit about like macronutrients and stuff like that. Obviously, calories in, calories out, that works. If you set up your macros the right way and you can stick to it, power to you. And that will be a way for you to get your, your dream body, stuff like that. But for a lot of people, we talked about some of those pitfalls and things like that. So I think we're going to wrap it here.
Sounds
Sandra,
good.
thank you for joining me as always.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was a pleasure. Bye.